Hey everybody, Dr. Jensen with CCJ 3701, Research Methods in Criminology. So again, picking up where we left off with hypotheses. These are actually really easy to write. It's just 5 sentences, super easy. We'll spend a whole section on this as we get ready to do your results. But these essentially are your predictions of how you think your variables are going to perform. So the first two just have to do with, how you predict your main independent variable and dependent variable, whether there is a relationship or not a relationship to them. So these are kind of more null and alternative hypothesis stuff that you learned in your earlier statistics classes, or maybe didn't learn. The other hypotheses have to do with how you think your control variables are going to perform. So they made a prediction about gender. They made a prediction about their family variable and about having a working mom. Okay, so these are just your specific predictions on how you think individual variables will do when you start running your statistics and your analyses in SPSS. Finally, the results section. So just a brief paragraph on what regression you're going to use. Again, if you have a numerical or interval style dependent variable, you're probably going to run linear regression or OLS. If you have a outcome based, like category this happened or this happened style dependent variable, then you're probably going to run binary logistic regression for that one. Okay. So it just describes the regression you're doing, reminds the reader of what the variables are, and then it jumps right into this cool looking little table. Okay, this is what we call a regression table. So it's usually table 4 or table 5 in your paper because you've had a few other tables that just describe your variables that happened before it. So you actually have a listing of all your variables, and here is what we call nested modeling, where we start introducing one variable at a time, adding more and more and more in to see how it does when all kinds of other variables are put together in the same model. Okay, so this is when we kind of start throwing in more and more and we see how things change. Okay, so this is the table you're going to build when you start running your regressions on your variables in SPSS. And then what's in here is you have the little B coefficients. That's what goes inside this first part. And they get little asterisks or stars that tell you if it's significant or not. And we always have this notation at the bottom of a table. Okay, and it's always this way. 1 star is significant at the 0.5 level, 2 stars at the 0.1 level, 3 stars at the 0.001 level. It's a pretty standard format that you see in pretty much any journal. Okay, and so that's what these little guys are. These are all B coefficients. Okay, and some are positive, some are negative. You get to talk about that later. Then at the bottom, you list your constant for each model, the y-intercept, the r-squared, and the n. Okay, the way you get your n, I'm not sure if I showed this to you, is when you're running your regressions in SPSS, you can ask for options and just click on descriptives inside the options, and it'll give you one little extra box, and it'll show you how many cases you're actually analyzing inside of that model. Okay, remember, the more variables you throw into an analysis, the more demanding of your data it becomes, and so you see over time you kind of lose cases. Your sample sizes get smaller and smaller the more you add in there. Okay, but essentially the strategy for writing the results table is this. Go ahead and run your variables in SPSS, fill out your table, model by model, and just report. Just get it all in there, and I'll have a whole section that shows you how to build a table like this, how to read them, and how to interpret them. So once you get your table built, put SPSS away, put your data away, you're done, and you can literally just write your results section by using this table that you made. Okay, where you can have a paragraph for each model, just stating in English what those little pieces mean. Okay, so as we scroll down, that's exactly what the student did. Starts to describe what the table is about, what the significance levels are, what the r-squared value says, if things are negative or positive, and we're going to get some practice at this as well, so you'll get pretty good at writing this up. Okay, so they just literally write out what things mean statistically and what things mean substantively. Okay, so what does it mean in English? Again, your reader does not have your data. You have to tell them all the stuff that SPSS spit out. Okay, so you have a few paragraphs describing all of those juicy results you just got. And then at the very end, you are in the last part of the paper, which is discussion and conclusion. Okay? So discussion is, I think, the most fun section to write. You've done all the heavy lifting. You've coded everything. You've written about how you've changed stuff. You've run all the analyses. You've made your tables. You wrote about what it means. Now you get to just sit and talk about it. What you think of it. Your own take on what you learned. Any results that were surprising to you. Implications of what you found. Does it suggest policy changes or to go about things in a different way? Did things perform as you expected? Okay, what also happens in here is we look at hypotheses. So how did your hypotheses, excuse me, do? Did your predictions turn out to be correct or were they incorrect? It's okay to be wrong in a paper. It's okay to not have anything be statistically significant in a paper. That is still a finding. That's still a result. So if that happens to you, don't panic. Don't think you're going to flunk the class, because we're looking at whether or not you ran those results correctly, and we can help you with that. Okay? What the results are is kind of irrelevant. It's more, did you get the right results? Okay? And it just sits there and describes the meanings, and then, you can also pull your theory back in, and you should pull your theory back in. Was my theory right? With how I thought all this stuff worked, was I actually correct in that explanation? Or do I need to propose a different idea of how all this stuff works? It's not quite what I thought. Okay? And that's a good way to kind of wrap up the discussion section, is to kind of finish talking about your big findings and how you may need to revise your theory or how it supports your theory. And then you get to conclusion. So the conclusion is just that. You're wrapping things up. There's a very brief overview, kind of similar to the abstract, on what your study was about, some basic things about it, your methods, your weaknesses, your strengths of your study, things you would change if you did it again, lessons learned kind of a thing. And then we kind of wrap up. She says, there's a weakness of this study. I wish I could have measured this way. I didn't have the data I wanted. I would have wanted a variable like this. All that kind of stuff. At the very end, what's the most important thing that I should take away from your paper, and what should we do next? What's the next thing we should turn our attention to keep moving forward? And that's it. That's how you write the famous last sentence of your paper, is what to do next. After that, you list your references, and you're done. That's the whole paper. Okay. And again, this is all going to be in APA format. And we included a little video on how to cite APA in case you're a little foggy on that, how to build your references page, and also how to do the in-text citations. But this is kind of the biggest piece that you create in the entire major. So it should be a beautiful thing, right? Making all your tables, writing all your paragraphs. This will be an incredible sample to provide to an employer, to a graduate program, a law school, to say, look at what I know how to do. Every table in there, I made that. Every analysis, I did myself. I coded all my data. I wrote up all the results. Look at what I can do. So this is a fantastic way to showcase all the skills that you learned in this class. So hopefully you find this helpful, just to overview the whole thing one more time. And again, remember, we're going to be writing these sections as we go over the next few weeks. You'll get to turn in drafts along the way and get some feedback, and then assemble it all together at the end. So if you have questions and need to know anything else about the paper and how it's going to come together, please let me know. Don't be afraid to reach out, and I wish you the best of luck.